It's Song Talk Radio.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio, the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. Most of the time. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we all become better at writing songs. I'm dialing in from our Toronto headquarters. I'm Neil Modi, and with me, my co-host, Phil Emery. How are you doing, Phil?
Calling in from St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm just fine, and it stopped snowing for a while, so it's going to start tomorrow, but we're enjoying it while we can.
Good.
Yeah,
we're still got piles and piles of snow here in Toronto, but milder temperatures are coming in the next few days, I think.
Someday.
They said maybe even rain next week. So hey.
Oh well, that'll be fun, isn't it?
That'll be fun. There's not quite enough slush out there right now, so could use some more. And everyone else, please send your comments, questions, weather reports to at Song Talk Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca for the email, and we'll share your thoughts on the show. And please visit songtalk.ca so you can see the show post for this episode, to find links to resources we mention, and to download lyric and chord sheets to follow along with the songs that we feature tonight. No songs per se, but we're very happy to welcome Kris SD, the founder and CEO of Sync Songwriter, helping songwriters pitch their songs to film and TV and more. Kris started off in a band that, after its dissolution in 1996, transitioned into music production. In 2000, Kris launched his career as a music producer by building his first home studio in Ottawa, where he began recording his Friends for Beer. Some of his early recordings garnered Juno Award nominations, which compelled him to relocate to Toronto in 2003. He was hired as the house engineer at the iconic Blue Rodeo's Woodshed studio, a position he held until 2012. During his time there, he had the opportunity to work with notable artists such as Kris Kristofferson, Garth Hudson from the band, as well as many other iconic Canadian bands. Albums Kris worked on have collectively earned 5 Juno Awards and 7 nominations, including Engineer of the Year. In 2012, Kris relocated to Los Angeles, but shortly after arriving, he and his wife discovered they were expecting their daughter. Realizing he no longer wanted to spend 12 to 14 hours working in studios, Kris pivoted and started Sundown Sessions Studio, an online recording studio to balance his career and family life. He also began expanding his network within the music licensing industry, forming relationships with some of the top music supervisors for TV and film. In 2017, Kris released his program, The Art of the Song Pitch, to reach indie songwriters on a much bigger scale to help them get their music placed in top shows, films, and ads. He's now known as the go-to guy for musicians looking to break into the world of sync licensing. Kris not only teaches his 5-step program for pitching songs to TV and film, but also connects songwriters face-to-face with key music supervisors in the industry. Welcome to Song Talk Radio, Kris SD.
Wow. So after that bio, I think we're done. We're good.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, everyone.
That's all we need to know.
Wow. Very comprehensive. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Real nutshell there. So
yeah,
a little Wikipedia entry there. It sounded like
pretty much. It says very well written wiki entry. So, can you tell us a little bit? So, assuming our songwriting audience knows nothing about sync licensing, what does it mean what does it mean to pitch your song to TV and movies?
Yeah, of course. So I might start this better if I tell the story of kind of how I discovered it. And I was actually in Toronto, and I was, working with artists in the studio. I'd work with major label artists, and I work with indie artists. And the major label artists, of course, had labels and agents and managers propelling their career along. And the indie artists I work with, I really admired them, because they had songs that were often just as good as the majors. And I loved working on them. But the problem is we'd work, blood, sweat, and tears on a record. And we'd work super, super hard. And then the record would go off into the ether, and crickets, nothing would happen, because they didn't have any way to kind of promote it. They'd get on, of course, they'd hop in a van back in the day and put posters and polls and stuff. Then with social media even, and started promoting it. Super, super difficult for indie artists, right? To try to break out of the noise. The other huge thing is, especially nowadays, is that everybody and their dog has a record out. It's like you've got GarageBand on your computer, you're going to put something out. You go to SoundCloud, there's millions of tracks out there. And so to stand out from the noise, even if you're great, even if you're talented, even if you're got the next, hit song, to even get heard by people who could actually make it happen is super, super difficult, So it takes years of trying to slog and get noticed and all of that. And so I was in this kind of same situation on a micro scale back when I was in Toronto, and started hearing these stories of these people saying like, oh, I got my song into this TV show and I got paid enough money to pay my rent for a year. And I'm like, what is this thing, And they're like, oh, it's music licensing. And I'm like, what's music licensing? Sounds corporate. I have no interest in that, And they're like, no, like you basically, what you do is if a TV show or a movie or an ad, they need music for their scenes, what they want to do is use your song, and they license it from you, meaning that it's your song. They just basically say, hey, can I use this for my show or movie or ad? And I'll pay you some money. And you keep the song. It's your song, but I just want to use it. And you're like, yeah, that sounds great. And then not only that, you get back-end royalties that come in every time it gets aired, right? Goes through your PRO like SOCAN. And so every, however often, quarterly, I guess, so you're getting your royalties that come in. But the biggest thing, the thing that really attracted me to this was the exposure was amazing. And so you think about if you get a good sync and you're on in front of potentially millions of people, and even if a fraction of them are Shazamming you or Googling your lyrics or whatever, you're talking hundreds of thousands of people that are trying to find you, right, online. And you get all this, like, attention. There's just this last year, this is a good example though, last year they got somebody I helped get one sync placement in a movie, Pain Hustlers, to be specific. They played 2 minutes of their song, and they said that it was the first sync placement they ever got. And they said they were written up in Billboard magazine. They had festivals calling to book them. They got, of course, paid really well. The song, the 2-minute song, they said the movie was like a music video for their song. And they had a huge fan list, and their Spotify spins went off the charts. And of course, when Spotify starts seeing all this attention on a song, the algorithm starts pushing your other songs higher, So it can be a huge boon to people land in the charts, doing that. So I coined this phrase later on, and that was basically like music supervisors, who are the people who put the music into movies, shows, and ads. They're hired by the movie studios because the directors and the producers are busy, making the movie or the show, ad, or whatever. So they hire these people called music supervisors to go find music for what they're doing. And then they basically clear it. So music supervisors are the people you want to know. And so I coined this phrase that music supervisors are the new A&R. They're the new artist and repertoire people, because they don't do it on purpose. But when you get your music through them into some production like that, they can be an amazing, the exposure can be absolutely incredible.
And is it the sort of thing that music supervisors are actively looking? I mean, if you're looking for a song, if you're a music supervisor, you're looking for a song. Like I'm thinking of Quentin Tarantino movies. He knows what songs he wants. They're usually songs out of the 70s, and he goes after them, right? And he tells his music supervisor, go find these songs, and these are the ones I want, right? But more generally speaking, are music supervisors sort of looking at random places, or like, where do they go looking for this stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they work for the directors and the producers. And so the final people who decide in the end, right, is going to be the director and the producers who have the vision for what the movie is. And they hired the supervisor to go find music if they need it. Tarantino probably already knows what he wants, and he's already got it all out. He's one of those directors. So he might literally go to a music supervisor, if they've got one, they probably do, and says, here are the songs I want, go clear them. And that means that you got to go out and talk to the publishers or the writers of the song and make sure that we can use them, because, if there's weird samples in them, or there's something, if there's, a ghost co-writer somewhere, that can be a big problem. So make sure they're cleared and cross the T's, dot the I's, get the contract signed, and then I'll put them in my movie. Most of the time, the supervisors, part of their job, like half their job, is clearance. The other half is going to find music that they think is cool. So they get hired based on they're like tastemakers, They get hired based on their ability to find music. So to answer your question, where do they go? How do they find it? So they will not just send an email out publicly and say, send me music. They'd be inundated. Everybody wants to know music supervisors. So they go to their go-to people, which is a very small group of people that they trust, that they know they can go to, who have cleared music, who are people they like to work with, and they're not going to give them problems and not hustle them too much and things like that. And those are typically publishing companies, labels. There's all kinds of other, like, musicians, like just people that they met, songwriter, that's me, right? I'm a trusted source of many, many music supervisors, because I work with a lot of indie musicians that I can connect with them. So they go to these go-to people and they basically say, I need music for this thing. And they send out what's called a brief. And a brief is just a little synopsis of kind of what music they need. So they'll send out this brief and it'll say something to these. Some of them are detailed, and like my intro here that you did, which was again, commend you for that. And some of them are terrible, right? They're like 2 lines: need music, heavy metal, or something. And but the detailed ones will include like the scene information, and like we want female vocals, and the drums should sound like this, and this is the kind of area we're looking for. So you know what to send them. Now, one key thing when you're a go-to person is you have to know when to send something and when not to send something. Not sending something is a smart idea if you don't have anything, because that's why they trust you. You're not going to waste their time, So the other 2 avenues, this is really important to talk about. The other 2 avenues for indie songwriters, right? People who are listening right now, that they can go and do, they can go to music libraries. Those are big repositories of music where you can go and you can look them up online. The easy ones to get in, they're called non-exclusive ones, and there's exclusive and non-exclusive. And exclusive ones mean that if you sign with them, you have to work with them. Basically, you can't go and work with another library. You can't even pitch your music yourself. They're only the ones who can pitch your music. And some people think that's a disadvantage, but the high-end ones do that. So typically they'll work harder, maybe keep you on the front burner, but they're a lot harder to get into often. Then there's a bunch of non-exclusive ones. Those are ones you can literally, right after this call, you could look them up, get on and just throw your music in there and sign the terms of use on the thing, and boom, done. If someone uses your song, they're going to pay you something for that. So that sounds cool. Then the other alternative is you can go to sync agents, who are kind of like libraries, except they're more proactive. They're literally agents, and they'll sign you and try to kind of push you. They've got connections like I do to music supervisors, and they'll kind of push your stuff. So awesome, right? That sounds great. Why doesn't everybody just do that? Why do I even exist? And, sing songwriter. And so the reason is because when you, going back to everyone and their dog has a record out, if you go to these libraries, there's hundreds of thousands to millions of tracks in them. And even with sync agencies, it's the same thing. And sync agents also want to pitch music that is going to get synced a lot. So they tend to use the people who are in the front burner. Either you've got the sound of the month, or you've got like some relationship with them, or you just had something big happen and people already know your name, or something like that. It's a very small percentage of the people who are getting consistent sync placements. So you're really a needle in a haystack. It's like playing the lottery. And so you can put your music in all kinds of places like that and nothing will happen. And if you don't believe me, just ask your musician peers, how many of you have been in libraries or agents, and how many sync placements have you got, right? You may hear the odd one, right? Sure, happens here and there. But mostly people say none. And that is no way to get exposure or even get extra money coming in, kind of thing. So that's when I figured out that it was about connecting indie musicians directly with music supervisors. And that's kind of my job, is I literally every year I work with a certain number of them, and then I make sure they know what they're doing, and then I introduce them directly to the supervisors so they can form their own relationships with them. I don't take a cut of the money or anything, and that's just how that works. So that's the ecosystem for indie musicians and how that happens, and that's where and how music supervisors get their music, essentially.
So you teach a program to teach songwriters and artists to basically do this on their own, or what are you teaching?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically, just to be really frank, it comes down to relationships. It really is who you know. It's just the way it goes. So when we normally talk about that, we have these negative images that come in, right? We have this sort of, nepotism, or we have, schmooze, or, all these kind of things. Oh, it's who you know, or like, oh, it's your uncle runs the label or whatever. It's not about that at all in my world. It's about knowing supervisors who are just like us, by the way. They're all the top supervisors aren't these like suit and tie folks who go in and count beans in ivory towers. They're literally like, they're cool. They're either musicians themselves, they love hanging out with bands, they love music, right? That's how they got into it. And they love hanging out with musicians. So those are the people you want to know and have relationships with. And the way to do that in a real organic way is to be able to do it like you would meet anybody else. Now, the problem, the huge issue here, right? The gate is you can't get to them. Right? How do you even get to them? You can't just hit them up on social or send them a cold email like, here's my songs, Yeah, you can look those up eventually and do some research for sure. But, they get inundated with emails. Like they can't. They just goes to the junk folder, because everyone wants to talk to them. So that's what I started doing was I have a huge network of supervisors I work with all the time. We got lots of sync placements for our members. And I literally democratized the whole thing. And I said, I'm not going to be a middleman. I'm going to let you leapfrog over the middlemen, and you can meet them directly. And I literally introduced, my friends become your friends. So I introduce you directly to these top people. And from there, it's up to you. So I can't guarantee you a sync. I can't like make things happen and put the word in their ear or anything. But what I can do is I can put you face to face with them and have them listen to your music. And then you got to take it from there. As one previous member said, Kris gives you the pickaxe, he gives you the shovel, and then he points to where the gold is. But I can't do the digging. So,
do you help the artists or the songwriters sort of develop their materials so it's more appealing to sync people, or is that not done?
Yeah. So I do this in two ways. One, I have my online studio that you mentioned, still have that Sundown Sessions Studio. And we produce world-class tracks for an indie budget and still do that. And the other way that I do it is within the program, the Art of the Song Pitch. There's a whole module. We're actually in it right now in the production module. And I teach them everything about how to produce their music properly for sync licensing. We have a writing module, how to make sure that you pick your songs the right way, or if you're writing, things to avoid. Now, here's one real key thing to know. If someone wants to get into sync licensing, a lot of times they think, oh, I have to learn how to write for TV and film, right? I got to look at the thing, and then I got to be like this kind of composer, write maybe what I don't want to write just to get the gig, That's the furthest thing from the truth. Supervisors, the number one thing they want is authenticity. They want the music to be authentic because it's got to be emotional. It has to move the audience. It's got to, have a beautiful synergy with what's going on the screen. So the best way to do that is write from your heart, write truthfully, write who be you. Stick to your genius zone, We're all bad at some things, and we're all really good at a few things. And then we're kind of jacks of all trades of a bunch of others, right? So in the songwriting, stick to the genius zone, the part where you're like, I'm good at that. Doesn't mean I'm a great singer. Doesn't mean I'm like, I can play guitar super well. It means that you are able to emote and create an art piece, something that moves people. Like your friends or family at the very least are telling you, wow, I could hear you in TV and film, or what you do is great. No matter what genre of the music that you do, And so authenticity is the sort of the number one very first thing you should think of doing when you're trying to get your music into TV and film.
So if I'm a songwriter, if I'm an artist, and I just write songs the way I would normally write songs, and then decide to pitch them for sync. Now, so I haven't gone through a list of things per se to say this is appropriate for sync, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to write my songs organically and authentically, right? Now, on the flip side, are the licensing people, are they basically going off of gut instinct? Well, oh yeah, that actually fits this scene perfectly. I'm not really sure why. I don't have a checklist of things I'm looking for particularly, but is that what they're doing? Is they going off a gut, or does it vary from person to
Yeah.
person?
Yeah, great question. So essentially, the very first thing to know is that the sync industry is huge, right? It's massive and it's growing like crazy. And so there's a home for every song. Now, there's not a home for every track. Like the recording sometimes might be substandard or might not be, or there might be whatever's going on, right, with the recording and the track itself. But there's a place for every song. And it could be everything from Tibetan throat singing to like, old country music to, whatever. It doesn't, Korean hip hop. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Like we just, so the movie Anora, I don't know if you guys saw it. It's up for a bunch of Oscars now. It won the Cannes Film Festival, and then it got nominated for a Gold Globe. Then it won the Critics' Choice Award, and now it's up for like 6 Oscars. And 2 of our members got 5 tracks into that, and so that was incredible. That's life-changing stuff, for them. And the 2 kinds of music that got in there are jazz and Russian hip hop. So there's a place for everything, So the very first thing you got to know when you're doing that is you got to write your songs authentically and be you, but you need to figure out what supervisor is looking for your music and when they want it. Because if you imagine the whole sync industry is a big sphere around you, you're not going to kind of shotgun blast your music out there and hope some supervisor hears it and has that gut instinct or whatever. That's not the way to do it. You have to figure out, which I teach in the Art of the Song Pitch, is how do you figure out what supervisors are looking for your music first? So you may be only targeting to one part of the sphere, You've got composers over here, you've got, hip hop over there, you've got rock music over there, and you do what you're, maybe you're a folk artist or something like that, and you're doing this part. And within the folk part, you're kind of hitting these kind of shows. So you're aiming, you're doing it smarter, not harder, right? The work part. So you're aiming for this much smaller target and being consistent with it. And that's how you do that. So that's the very first step. Now, to really answer your question based on that is that supervisors, they put out these briefs and they say, we're looking for, folk music, male vocal, with a hint of 60s or something, 1960s in it. I'm just making this up, whatever. And so it's like, okay, cool. Hi, I've got that, So then you send that. Then they get it from you. They get it from their go-to people, right? So they have a number of songs in front of them. And then they start listening to them. And at that point, that's where the art comes in, right? That's where the gut comes in. That's where they're like, this just works with the scene, And then they do what's called a spotting session when they kind of narrow it down to like 3 or 4 or 5 songs. They go to a spotting session with the producer and the director. They watch the scene and they pop the songs in underneath it. And then they listen and watch. Like, oh, that jumps off the screen. Let's use that one. And that's how that works. So
are you kind of a matchmaker then? Like you're literally taking, like, the indie artists, the supervisors, what they're looking for, what they have. Are you sort of just aligning them and saying, hey, you guys may want to talk to this supervisor. The supervisor, you may want to talk to this indie artist, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's so I don't get quite that granular. I think of me more like a doorman of a club where there's a bunch of supervisors in there, and it's really hard to get in. And I know them all, and I can just let you, if you can go meet them, then you go in and you meet them. So I literally introduce them because the key is not to do like these sort of one-offs, right? Not to sort of show up and do like a pitch, right? It is called the Art of the Song Pitch, and essentially that is what you're doing. But the secret of it, the thing that really works are the relationships. The who you know part really means who you know, not who you meet. It's who you know. And so I introduce the songwriters to supervisors so that supervisors can be like, hey, oh, wow, this is great music. I can't actually use that right now because I'm not working on anything. They usually work on like 5, 6, 7 shows sometimes. I've got nothing for your music. But can you send me more stuff? Because this is great. Because if something comes down the pipe, I want to have this. And I like what Kris is doing at Sing Songwriter, and you're coming through him, and this is great. So, boom, you send it. And then you're like, a month goes by, 2 months goes by. All of a sudden, seems like out of the blue, you get this email. You're like, how did that happen? And it wasn't out of the blue. It was the relationship. The supervisor remembered you. They liked your music. They thought it was cool. They have a folder, right, with like, the art of the song picture, sync songwriter on their desktop. And every time something comes on, they're clicking open that folder and they're, oh yeah, I marked that there. I cataloged it that way. They check it out. Right. That's cool. So you can have these sync placements that happen kind of what seem like random, but they're not, because the supervisors are actually pitching your music, and often they'll pitch music and you'll miss, right? There'll be 5 songs in the spotting session. They won't pick yours and you'll never know about it. They're not going to get back to you and tell you, but it happens all the time. And if they're pitching your music, at that point, it's just a matter of time,
So how long is this course? Like, tell us about the course. Is it what exactly is this thing?
Yeah, sure. So it's basically it's a 6-month course. The only thing is we only do it once a year. So we only open it every January and then we close it. So there's no opportunity, unfortunately, to get into it because we cap the number of people who we work with, because we have to do, it's like it's not a scalable thing, right? There's not an infinite number of supervisors. I know a ton of them, but to make it effective and get results, we make sure that we cap the class. It's a very kind of specialized thing that I do. And so every year we do that, and we just launched it in January, and we got the new class in, and we're working hard. We're in the production module right now, working away, and then I'll be introducing them to the supervisors in about a month or two, and then we'll be starting into that phase, and then next January comes around, we'll be doing it again. But if anybody wants to kind of hop on our mailing list and hang out, I'm always sending blogs out and information like this, kind of every week, like, here's how it works and whatever. Just hop over to Sync Songwriter or whatever, and sign up. And we're not spammers. We're like a family store, okay? We're not these corporate people. So everything we send is gold, and we really, really care about the musicians that we work with, and that's much more important to us than like marketing and stuff like that to them.
Right. Yeah. Now, I was on your website and I saw a couple of your YouTube videos, and it was like really good content. It's like really helpful, useful stuff, and just like, yeah, very, very generous.
Oh, thank you. Right. Appreciate that.
You said something earlier about like you had like a list of like things to avoid if you're writing a song that, if you're thinking about authenticity, but if you wanted to write a song with a sync license in mind, what are the sorts of things you'd want to avoid?
Sure. So there's kind of a lot of them. Don't have time to go into them all, but just the easy ones like low-hanging fruit are basically like universal lyrics, for example. That's a big one. If you write a song about Sally or John, it's hard, right, to place that in something, because there's got to be a Sally or a John in there. So that's called a specific lyric. Or you write a song about New Orleans, or Saskatoon or whatever. It's like, well, it's got to be related there somewhere, right? So having universal lyrics is a benefit. Now, here's the thing, is that you don't want to make your music generic. Right. So a lot of people think, universal lyrics, and then I got to dumb it down and then I'm betraying myself as an artist. It's like, don't do that. Just on certain songs, when you write them, just be cognizant of that. And even if you are specific, maybe be specific in one part of the song, so that, because they rarely use a whole song. So, if you're like, I'm going to be specific in the third verse, then that's cool. They can use the second verse in the chorus and your bridge in the last chorus or whatever, and but that's just a kind of a thing to pay attention to. I write songs too, I'm not known as a songwriter, but I certainly enjoy writing songs, and I write some songs that, because I have the opportunity to give my songs to supervisors when they're done, but I have songs where I'm really specific. Do I care? No, I don't care. I'm being an artist. I'm being a songwriter. I have other ones that I'm like, no, that would totally work, and I am a bit more universal with it. So that's one. I'll pick one for like music production, for example. You want to give them a sync mix. And that means that it's just one thing, is that, in radio mixes back in the day, more so back in the day when they used to say, do a radio mix, which meant turn your vocal up like a dB, or a half a dB typically, or like up to a dB, maybe dB and a half if you're, Oasis doing Wonderwall, which is insanely loud vocal, right? Just love hearing that. So it's like, bah! But it works. But in sync, the music has such a big part of the emotion, right? And it's not the vocal. And you also don't want to be telling a story while the dialogue's going on, and you don't want to be dominating over the dialogue. So what you want to do is have your vocal just a little bit back. And now, not buried, not like, oh, Kris said I got to put the vocal, way back. No. You just have to not have it dominate. That's it. So you just kind of turn it down in your mix until it's just too quiet, then turn it back up a bit. And then, salt and pepper, right? Little EQ, little compression to adjust, and you're good to go. So that's one. Or another one last one is like mid-range frequencies. That can be problematic. So if you have a lot of trumpets or electric guitar parts that are really in the mid-range, our ears are most sensitive to the mid-range, which is in the dialogue range, right? And probably our ears are like evolved to be that way because of speech. And so we are very attuned to mid-range frequencies. And so you want to be careful with your music is don't have things that are fighting for the mid-range too much. It doesn't mean scooping out your mix or anything. Just pay attention, just be like, it's a little harsh, like let's make sure we put that back. Or was recently listening to a song and advising one of my students about this. They had a vocal, beautiful vocal, and then they had a violin, over top. Violin they're both mid-range instruments. The violin was kind of running into the mid-range of the vocal. So I said, look, just take the violin and carve it out a little bit in the mids, not so it sounds scooped, but just so that it's, leaving room for the vocal and they can both coexist together in that area, kind of thing.
Someone once told us that about sync stuff, and his big thing was that you should have many different versions of your track, like one with like no vocals, one with vocals up and down. Is that still considered to be correct, or?
Yes, to an extent. Really, the only things that you should have are your main mix with your vocal, and then an instrumental only. Those are the two main ones. Those are the two things that supervisors care about the most. They might have been talking a little bit more like about production music, because in production music is very different.
Yeah.
You have to have cut downs and 15 second, 30 second, 60 second, hard stops on everything, vocal, a cappella, stems, the whole bit. And with songwriters, it's like mix, instrumental only, maybe an a cappella, maybe stems, but not necessary. That's it.
Does all this also apply to people who do like electronic tracks?
Yeah, you mean in terms of instrumentals, or?
Well, just the same process. Is there a different process if you're just doing like electronica dance stuff, or?
Yeah, same thing. It's all the same. Yeah, you just make sure that you have those different versions. For example, we just a couple of months ago, we had one of our members got a third track into Grey's Anatomy through a supervisor we introduced them to, and I produced the same song at my studio for him, and it was funny because they got sent that version, our version, and they got sent his version, and they decided to cut them, and they used our thing for the end, our mix for the end, and his mix for the front half, and they stitched them together. So they do kinds of lots of little editing. So you'll hear like they'll take the instrumental only because there's dialogue going on, and they'll play it underneath, and then character gets up and walks away, and then the vocal comes in, boom, seamlessly. So they cut your instrumental only into your main mix, kind of thing.
Wow, that's really cool. So if someone wanted to join the, let's say next year, wanted to join the your course, do they have to sort of apply? Is there sort of like an audition, or?
No, there's not. And here's why. We if you can't write songs, then we can't obviously work with you. So that's the one, cut off. And I'm very well, there's only one other one is, sometimes people are like, oh, I just, I'm going to put up my credit card and then I got to pay my rent. And, it's like, whoa. Hang on. We don't take anyone who's, we don't mind people who are trying to stretch for a dream. We're all doing that. But we don't want to, anybody who's having survival issues, you got a roof over your head and food on your table. So those are the two things. The reason for that, and I've been asked this, why don't you vet all the people that come into out of the song pitch? Like, why aren't you just picking the best people? So two reasons. One, I'm not elitist. I believe that humans are generally all the same, like very similar, right? We have like definitely like little mountain peaks, or some people are born like super crazy high IQs, and some people have specific talents they're born with. They're far and few between. Most of us are really like very similar. It comes down to opportunity and hard work, a lot of that, you know, and ability to see opportunities, right? So, and so the reason, the other part of that is that there's a story about how the Beatles got signed that really always stuck with me. And they had been rejected by, I think, by 7 labels at that point in 1963, I think it was. And George Martin was asked to see them. You know, their manager Epstein came and said, "Hey, I want you to check out my band here," you know. And he went and saw them, or he heard them, or he, you know, listened to their stuff, whatever it was. And he didn't think they were that good. But he signed them because he said, when they came into a room, I somehow felt uplifted. And when they left, I felt diminished. He knew there was something about them, you know? And so they got that chance. And we've had so many songwriters and members who have come in who came in with one song or nothing recorded, or maybe weren't as good as the others, and it ended up landing amazing placements, you know, through working with me and going through the art of the song pitch, and where I, you know, show them what to do and how to do it, and everything from how to set up your home studio to the things to focus on to, you know, how to pick your songs, and then how to vet, and then, you know, deal points and how to pitch and all this other stuff. And we even had one woman come in with 4 songs on her smartphone, right? And she says, "Can you produce these for me?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, in the course, you can work with me and you get this, you know, much better price if you're a student of mine. So sure, why don't we work together?" And we produced it, and she ended up with 4 sync placements.
Wow.
You know, and she showed up with a phone, with a song on a phone, you know? And so
You just never know.
never know. So I'm not elitist that way, you know. You got to just let everyone have a chance.
Exactly. That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm here in the band. I think that's all the time we have on Song Talk Radio. Special super thanks to Kris SD.
Thank you, sir.
That was so generous of you to come on and share all your insights and knowledge and everything. Yeah, that's great. So where can we send our listeners to find out more about Sync Songwriter and more about you?
Yeah, sure. I just would go to syncsongwriter.com. So that's SYNC, syncsongwriter.com. And I'd love to have you say hi when you sign up. Just say, "Hey, Kris heard you on the podcast," and love to hear from you. And I'll be sending you all kinds of stuff throughout the year that you can really like get the ball rolling, and then maybe we see you in January.
Awesome. All right. We'll definitely send our listeners there, and that'll link will be on the show post for this episode. And as usual, we want to hear from you too. So please send us your comments on Facebook or Instagram to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email, feedback@songtalk.ca. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos and full episodes. And subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. You can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page on the website. And please join us at our next monthly Song Talk meetup. If you're in Toronto for our in-person meetups, or anywhere in the world for our online meetups, it's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend. Bring a song and a lyric sheet and get constructive feedback from other songwriters. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. You can follow Phil.
PhilEmery.ca.
And Kris, is there a social media channel you guys post on a lot, or is there a good place to follow you?
You know, you can look up Sing Songwriter, and we're on Facebook, of course, and I think Instagram. That's not my department. My team does that stuff. But the easiest way is syncsongwriter.com, and just head over to the site, and that's the easiest way.
Awesomeness. All right, and be sure to stop by the website, songtalk.ca, to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on writing. Keep on pitching.
Yeah, pitching and writing. And sinking.